Israel to visit the site of the appalling massacre of those 12 children and young people, and he expressed solidarity and condolences to the residents of the town. More on that in a moment. On our fallen soldiers, firstly, the sad news of further IDF casualties since the last briefing. 689 since the start of this war. First Sergeant Noam Dweck was just 19 years old, and from Kiryat Motzkin, he fell in battle in the south of Gaza. First Sergeant in the reserves, Moti Raveh, was aged 37 years old, and from Shani, he was also killed in southern Gaza. And Sergeant Yonatan Aaron Greenblatt was also aged just 21, and from Bet Shemesh, he was seriously injured on July 20th and died of his wounds also in the southern Gaza. These are all devastating losses. All of us here in Israel send condolences to these dear families of our heroic fighters who fell in combat from terror attacks, and our civilians. We embrace the bereaved families in this, their most difficult hour. We are committed to the testament of the fallen to continue to absolute victory over Hamas. May the memories of the fallen heroes be a blessing forever. Now to the north, Israel is still reeling from the Hezbollah rocket attack in Migdal Shams, murdering 12 children and injuring 44. The Prime Minister has just left Migdal Shams, where he visited in solidarity with the residents and the people of the town, and all Druze, actually. It was a direct hit by a rocket at kids playing peacefully in a football field in the center of the town. We know exactly where the rocket was launched from on Saturday. It was launched at 6:18 p.m. from Lebanon. We've released a map of where it was fired from in Lebanon on the IDF website and their Twitter feed. We know exactly what rocket was fired. How do we know? Because we found the remains of the rocket on the wall of the football field, and you can see them on the IDF Twitter or X feed. It was a Falak 1 rocket with a 53-kilogram warhead, an Iranian-supplied Hezbollah rocket. Only Hezbollah has these rockets. Iran has given Hezbollah many precision-guided missiles. This was not one of them. Hezbollah chose to use this weapon this time. You know, we've been on the receiving end of around 6,800 Hezbollah launches since October the 8th. Now, the Druze as a community are precious to Israel. Many have fallen in defense of this nation. That could be perhaps why they were targeted. In this war for our home and our collective home, 80,000 Israelis have been displaced. This is not a sustainable reality. The Prime Minister has made that absolutely clear just a couple of moments ago. The state of Lebanon and the Hezbollah terror organization under Iranian guidance, let's not forget that Hezbollah are a unit of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. They bear full responsibilities for these acts of aggression and their results. This is a blatant violation of Security Council resolutions 1559 and 1701. You know, we're often asked, what is the aim of our battle in the north? And I can answer with one word. It's victory. Victory at all costs, victory in spite of all the terror, victory however long and hard the road may be, for without victory there is no survival. That's how Churchill put it, and that's the way we put it today. Israel's Security Cabinet met last night. The Cabinet authorized the Prime Minister and the Defense Minister to decide on the manner and the timing of Israel's response to Hezbollah, a unit of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. The Prime Minister has made clear that Israel will not allow this terror. Hezbollah will pay a heavy price that it has not paid thus far. Now an update from Kogat and their work coordinating aid into Gaza over the last 24 hours. 219 trucks with humanitarian aid goods went into Gaza. 6 tankers of cooking gas for essential infrastructure were also transferred. 6 forklifts purchased by the United Nations aid agencies designated to boost the UN logistics capacity were transferred to Gaza, and 64 aid trucks were collected today from Kerem Shalom, and 62 by the private sector and 2 by the United Nations. Currently, there are over 500 trucks worth of aid simply waiting as they have been for many weeks on the Gazan side of Kerem Shalom, waiting to be collected by the hopeless and the hapless UN aid agencies. So that's the end of our briefing today. I will now happily take your questions, which you should put in the chat together with your news outlet. First question here is from Jane Merrick from the I newspaper in London. There is speculation in the UK that the UK government is about to announce a partial ban on arms exports to Israel. What's your understanding of this? And what is your reaction if they do announce a ban? Thank you for that question, Jane. First things first, let me just state that Israel regards the UK as an ally. It regarded the last government as an ally, and it regards Keir Starmer's government as an ally. That's a very important point. Another important point to remind you all is that Israel has saved the lives of many people in the UK through coordination between Israel's security services and the UK's. Many British lives on the streets of the capitals of the UK and its other major cities have been saved by Israeli action. We regard the UK as an ally. We'll obviously judge what action, whatever comes out of the UK. I note that the Foreign Secretary, the new Foreign Secretary, David Lammy, said that that defensive weapons would not be included in any of these sorts of actions, and him recognizing that this is a country which lives in an extremely dangerous neighborhood. There are currently discussions between Israel's government and the UK, and we will let you know about the results of those discussions when we are ready to release more comment. Next question here is from Celia Vasdal from TV2 Norway. Firstly, is Israel planning for a retaliatory attack following the terror from Majd al-Shams? Thank you for that question, Celia. The Prime Minister has just visited the town. He expressed solidarity, and he made the very clear point that these sorts of attacks on Israeli citizens and on Israel are simply not sustainable. This terrorist organization backed by Iran, it's a unit of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, are simply not sustainable. Our people, 80,000 of them, being displaced from their homes is simply not sustainable. One way or another, through diplomacy or whether through other means, our north will be secured. Second part of that question, what is Israel doing to prevent a full-scale regional war? Thank you for that question, Celia Vasdal from TV2 Norway. Look, we are under attack on 7 fronts here in Israel. Let me share them with you. Firstly, we've talked about the Gaza front from Hamas. Also an Iranian proxy. The Houthis in Yemen, Hezbollah in Lebanon, Shiite militias in Iraq and in Syria, Iran-backed terror attacks in Judea and Samaria and the West Bank, and of course attacks directly conducted by Iran itself. Look, the world saw on April 14th, when we faced Iran and their attacks on us, in defending ourselves against this Iranian terror access, Israel stands on the front line against this regime that threatens the entire Middle East. that threatens the entire world. That's why everyone who seeks a more secure and stable Middle East should fully support Israel's actions against this terror axis. We are only a stopgap. We are only an attack point for Iran on the way over to Europe, on the way over to the US. We're just a stopping point. They mean to defeat us and then move on further. So whether it's in Yemen or in Gaza, in Lebanon or elsewhere, we say very clearly to Israel's enemies, we have a very, very simple message. Do not be in any doubt of Israel's determination to defend itself on every one of these fronts. All those who seek to harm us will pay a very heavy price for their aggression. The Prime Minister has said that Hezbollah will pay a price that they have not paid thus far. Next question here is from Dan Williams from Bloomberg. Will Israel calibrate its retaliation against Hezbollah with a view to avoiding escalation into an all-out war in Lebanon? Thank you very much for that question, Dan. I've already addressed this point, but on Lebanon in particular, Lebanon is a classic example of a failed state, and it's a failed state because Iran have infiltrated the country. Almost no one in weekend media asked the simple question of Iran's foreign minister, who was doing the rounds in the media. They didn't ask this simple question: how is it that you have another army? The Lebanese army is essentially a useless organization. How is it that you do not have any control of Hezbollah? It's another army. It's almost a separate government within Lebanon. That is a symbol of a failed state. So whether Lebanon is able to control Hezbollah, as they have been unable to until this point, Israel will not allow this aggression on our people. Second question from Dan Williams of Bloomberg. Does Israel regard as credible Erdogan's threat of Turkish intervention against it in the Gaza war? Dan, I've got no comment on the comments of the Turkish president. Next question is from Jeremy Sharon from the Times of Israel. Why was the medical evacuation of 150 children from Gaza cancelled by the Prime Minister yesterday? And will a new date for the evacuation be set in the coming days? Thank you very much for that question, Jeremy. We haven't got anything more to add at the present time. The Prime Minister's also addressed this, I think, yesterday or the day before. Next question from Hannah Julian from the Jewish Press. There are reports that Hezbollah has in its arsenal an EMP weapon. Dr. Ayal Pinko, a weapons expert, says this is not new, and other countries, including the US, also have them. But if such a weapon is launched at Israel, will an interceptor neutralize it or trigger its operational capability? Thank you for that question, Hannah. Look, Israel has a very complex defensive array of weapons, and we know precisely how to deal with Hezbollah. Hezbollah has not felt the full force of the IDF. We will always prefer negotiations and diplomacy over military action, but one way or another, no one should be in any doubt of this country and this government's determination to defend itself. One way or another, we will defeat this Iranian aggression. Look, our enemies know how to fight us. They know that we value human life as precious. Hamas is not upset that part of Gaza has been destroyed. They're only upset that more of Gaza has not been destroyed. And the same is true for Hezbollah in Lebanon. We will defend ourselves. Next question from Fred Ager. And the question is, Tel Aviv's Dizengoff Street has seen a 75% drop in tourist sales since the Israel-Hamas conflict began in October 23, despite rebounding operating costs, and 46,000 businesses facing difficulties. You are sharing with me that there are issues regarding compensation for businesses in this country. Does Israel's government plan on taking measures to ensure that small businesses receive the financial aid they've applied for? Thank you for that question, Fred. I would put that question to Israel's Treasury or its finance ministries, who will be able to give you more details on that. Next question from Fred. Speaking on Channel 12, question from Fred Ager of asking us what's the Prime Minister Office response to claims made against the Prime Minister regarding the attack at Kibbutz Nir Oz. So look, there will be time to have a full investigation into the catastrophic failures which occurred on October the 7th. That is the way Israel has conducted itself in the past. And after this war is won, after Hamas have been defeated, after we have removed their governance and military capabilities, after we've ensured that we've got our hostages home, after we've ensured that Gaza can never be a threat to us, there will, there will be a full dissection about the failures which occurred on October 7th and ensure that they can never happen again. That's the military failures, the intelligence failures, the government failures. All the failures will be looked into to ensure that this disaster can never happen again. Next question is from Giovan Battista Brunori from Italy. After the talks in Rome, when and where will the next round of negotiations be, and what are the prospects? And that's from Giovan Battista Bruno from RAI, Italian TV and radio. So let me share with you the latest information on the talks, because you're right to say that the talks are ongoing. Mossad Director David Barnea returned from his meeting with the mediators in Rome yesterday. I can confirm that. At the meeting, the sides discussed the draft agreement document with the clarifications that were conveyed from Israel, and the negotiations on the main issues will continue in the coming days. There's a limited amount of which I can share with you because these are ongoing negotiations. I can't hold these negotiations in public. Lives literally hang in the balance. It's one of the main war aims to get our 115 hostages back. But I just want to make some general points. The framework which we're working on right now is one which was agreed by Israel and also supported by President Biden, and it's designed to enable the return of our hostages without obstructing Israel's other goals of this war. We're insisting on several basic demands, which are important that you know: the option to return to fighting until all of the goals of the war are met, prevention of smuggling ammunition from Egypt into the Gaza Strip, and of course preventing the return of thousands of armed terrorists to the north of the Gaza Strip, and of course maximizing the number of living hostages that return from Hamas captivity. We insist that the war will not end until all of our goals are met: the return of our hostages, dismantling Hamas's government and military capabilities, and moving the terrorist threat and removing the terrorist threat to Israel. As the Prime Minister's made quite clear, things are developing and there is a certain amount of reason for hope, and we certainly urge that all the families, no matter how difficult this is, and this is a heart-wrenching, these are heart-wrenching times for the families and friends of the hostages. No one can imagine what they're going through. The terrible travails which their poor families are going through. But we're asking them not to lose hope. We will get there. Okay, I think that's the last question that we've received today. So in the meantime, thank you for joining us. We'll have another briefing this time tomorrow. Please do stay safe. And again, I would encourage you to look at the Prime Minister's Twitter feed, where you'll get the latest photos and his comments regarding his visit to Majd al-Shams in the last few hours. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.